Are things like Prop 13 in California and Prop 2.5 here impediments that are maybe outlived their usefulness at this point? Or are they causing problems with the structure of funding?
Yeah. I won't speak to Prop 13. Prop 2.5 is I think well intentioned, and I think if you're asking me, is it time to do away with Prop 2.5? I'm not sure that really answers our need, because the property tax is inherently regressive, and it has a particular impact on people on fixed income, on seniors, on people who are out of work, for example, and that worries me. I think we have a reliance on the property tax here in Massachusetts that is greater than most other states east of the Mississippi, with the possible exception of New Hampshire. And so for me, some of the things that we have been working on, including some things that have been unpopular, like the resort casino bill, for example, we're about trying to get some extra resources, some other tools, and to cities and towns to get the pressure off the property tax.
Without having to restructure the whole tax structure of the
Correct,
state.
correct. Because I think that the question about Prop 2.5 really is about, should we have no limit on property taxes? And my point is that property tax as a way to fund the services people say they want, we need a better way. I don't think that's the area to focus on, because of how hard it is for people who, at least until recently, were house rich, very valuable properties with maybe high taxes, but who themselves may be on fixed income.
Right, where the assessments are spiraling from.
That's right. That's right. So I think that there is there's opportunity in any crisis. I think that there's some short-term tools that cities and towns have gotten that we propose, like eliminating the telecom exemption for property tax. And the phone company didn't pay property tax on the same poles and wires that the electric company is paying property tax on. That's gone now. In this last budget, giving cities and towns the option to put a penny or two on a meal or on lodging and so on, is another way to have, again, more than one lever. And then on the cost control side, being able to move into a more cost-effective healthcare plan for municipal employees, like the GIC at the state level. There's a cooperative out here that essentially actually does better than the GIC. Or to get underperforming pension plans into the state system where the costs are lower, are measures that came into place last year, and they will help. And I think we're going to have to continue to work on partnerships like that.
May I follow Dan's question up? You just then you echoed, I think, what you had been saying in your campaign about property tax and the pressures thereof. And the way in which is your Republican predecessors drove down the income tax from 1990 forward. The Prop 2.5, limiting how much municipalities could raise their budgets, was met at the same time with inflation that exceeded 2.5%. And over a 30-year period, as inflation went up, property tax limits were held in check by 2.5, that you had Republicans driving down income taxes. It sounded to me in your campaign that you were really telling the electorate that you would not get into gimmick tax policy with no new tax pledges, and that everything was on the table. But it would appear that income tax, the most progressive of all taxes, has really not been a part of your portfolio, part of your strategy on these things. Instead, potentially divisive issues like casino gambling have arguably...
As opposed to potentially divisive issues like the income tax?
Well, no, I understand, indeed. But I question. In other words, it seems to me that if judged by action, that you've decided that in fact gambling is an easier issue to take on in the Commonwealth than income tax. Even though I wonder whether or not people didn't support you in part because you did seem to recognize that whether parents are paying it in fees because they've got to pay for Little League fees where they didn't used to, or they're paying it in higher property taxes, higher school fees, and other related taxes, if they're smokers, sin taxes, that the equitable way to do this from a progressive point of view is with income tax. What is the issue? Is it a political issue or is it a philosophical objection?
No, well, it may be all that, but I think, let me say this. First of all, the resort casino proposal, as divisive and complicated as it was not about taxation. For me, that was about jobs. It was about revenue, and it was the same analysis that we ought to apply to any industry that's interested in operating here. It had upsides and downsides. If we're going to go down that path, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, in my view. And we tried to come up with the right way to do it, and it went down in flames, as you know. We have avoided proposing any broad-based tax, and I had the same hesitation around the sales tax, not for philosophical reasons, but because I think it's it's a crummy time to ask people, whatever it is, even the gas tax, but just a crummy time to ask people. But second, I think it's a very hard case to make to the public to pay more for the status quo. That was the reason for insisting on the reforms before I would support the sales tax, and I think there is more we're going to have to do to show people that they're paying for something better than the status quo. Now, push back on one factual premise. When you said the income tax is the most, did you say it was the most equitable or the most progressive? Yeah, it is. We have a flat tax in the Commonwealth. That's changing that is a constitutional change, and you know what's involved in that. It's not that it shouldn't be done or couldn't be done, but I don't think that see my view is, and I did say this during the campaign. If you were, sounds like you were paying attention. I think we start in the wrong place with the question of what's the revenue source. I think the place to start is what do we want government to do and not do, and then what does that actually cost? And then what are the different levers to pull, the different means by which to pay for that? I think that's a conversation we have to have. I think that's a conversation we may begin to have in the course of the campaign. It's a conversation, if anything, this crisis has, I think, made more immediate. I'm eager to have it. And then what the outcome is, we will see. But I think that there's some fundamental questions we have to ask first about what it is we want government to do, and I think well, that's what I think.
Can I follow up on one point, which is the point? Are you saying that unless a tax on income is a marginal rate, that it's inherently regressive?
Well, I don't know about all that. I'm saying we've got a flat tax.
We have a flat. We have a percentage, but it's based on income.
Right. It's still
Right.
flat, and what I hope one day we will get to is a progressive income tax. But that's a constitutional change. And as I say, but I don't think that's the place to start for reasons I just said.